Hi, I'm Sunny Goldberg, and welcome to Know Your Neighbors. I am so excited for our holiday show today because everybody asks me, when are you going to do this book thing with the librarians? And so I am sitting here today with Laura Eckely, our Larchmont head librarian. Well, I always forget. Are you chief? What are you?
Director.
Director. Okay. And Susan Riley, director of Mamaroneck Library. I'm not going to take any more time because we're going right into it.
That's right.
Laura, go for it.
I'm kicking it off with 3 hostess books. So we're all going to be invited to
And
tons
these are
of parties.
things for the holiday that you want to buy or you want to bring.
That's right. You want to maybe bring it with you when you go to someone's house or drop it off to somebody that you're saying thank you to. So the first one is one of my favorite cookbooks that has just come out. I've already made several recipes from it. It's called Dinner in an Instant by Melissa Clark.
Oh, if it's really an instant, excellent.
And it focuses on slow cooker and Instapot recipes, but also it's Melissa Clark, who, if you are a regular reader of the New York Times food section, then you have most assuredly read some of her little stories and tried some of her recipes. I've tried 3. They're very good.
Good.
The next one, really perfect for bringing to a party, is a book called Corked, a wine-fueled adventure among the obsessive sommeliers, big bottle hunters, and rogue scientists who taught me how to live for taste by Bianca Bosker.
What a title, my God.
Quite the
Says
title.
it all. Yeah.
It says it all. It's obviously nonfiction, and it is the story of an amateur drinker and professional reporter who delves into the world of sommeliers and wants to learn more about wine and how they do what they do. Because, as you know, there are people in the world who can take a sip of wine and they can tell you exactly where.
There's a whole PBS thing on Somalia. I mean, that is an amazing.
It's an amazing talent to be able to do that.
And there's not that many of them.
No, there isn't. So this was a 18-month investigative reporting project that she embarked on. And the book is both interesting, educational. It's also very funny. Good. So that's a great gift. And my third hostess gift is a book that I actually have with me. It's called Summer Afternoon at Manor Park. It comes in both a large size and a small size, a pocket size,
And
as
who
it were.
did that wonderful book?
This book was created by Philippa Wharton, who coincidentally is our camera woman today.
A very talented woman, there's no doubt about it.
And this lovely book is on sale throughout the village of Larchmont, the village of Mamaroneck, and a variety of places, including the Voracious Reader and Anderson's. And it's a lovely illustrated look at Manor Park. Yeah. All pictures taken by Philippa, who has been a resident of Larchmont for 26 years.
And she's got, I know, a new game.
She also has this amazing little game, which is a great hostess gift that features the weather vanes of Mamaroneck and Larchmont. And it's a matching game, but also if you live locally and you want to do a walking tour, it's a seek and find game because you have to go around and see if you can figure out whose house these weather vanes are on.
Fabulous?
It's a lot of fun. If you're looking for something little to pick up, this is being sold at Right On and Miller's and Foley's as well.
Once again, supporting a community, and Philippa is donating the
proceeds go to Manor Park.
Right.
Yes. So all good gifts to bring for your holidays.
Okay.
And I'm changing the tone up. Okay. What I'd like to talk about first is a book called Strange Weather by Joe Hill. Now, if you haven't heard of Joe Hill is the son of Stephen King. And there's a definite Stephen King flavor. This is a 4-pack of mayhem. There are 4 novellas in this story. My favorite one was one called Aloft, about a chubby guy who is going to be jumping out of an airplane, doing his first tandem fall, and they land on a cloud, which is a solid cloud, and they can't get off.
Wow.
So it's a little supernatural and very spooky. Not frightening so much as it is just weird.
And he writes well.
He writes very well.
He does.
Very, very well.
Perfect.
And it's nice to be able to delve into these little 4 novellas.
I just want to add that I'm a secret horror fan, and his first book, which is called The Heart-Shaped Box, is the scariest book I've ever read.
That was a very frightening book.
The most frightening book I've ever read. He's really
Joe
good.
Hill, Heart-Shaped Box.
Yes.
This one's
and some of the other stories in there, they're short novels, really. One is called Snapshot, where you don't want to have the guy take your picture because it steals your memories. Loaded, which is something about a gun terrorism, sort of gun violence sort of a thing, and Rain, where these sharp little needles come down out of the sky and they're killing everybody.
Okay.
So this is a great book to give. But my mother's favorite book is called Standard Deviation by Katherine Heine. And this is about a contemporary New York City marriage under stress. We've got a 56-year-old gentleman and his new wife, who is much younger, and they have a 10-year-old son,
surprise.
I know, who is on the spectrum. And he is very erudite and slow and precise and makes a lot of money. And she is the kind of woman where if you met her in a supermarket, the two of you would have exchanged your entire life history within 10 minutes. She becomes your next best friend. And it's very much a marriage of opposites. And he keeps finding himself wondering, how the heck did he ever get hooked up with this woman?
Wow.
Because they're so
And the
very
name
different.
again?
It's called Standard Deviation. And it was a wonderful book,
Oh,
really,
good.
really terrific. And then one of my favorites is called Fierce Kingdom. Totally different. It's about a woman named Joan, and she has a 4-year-old son named Lincoln, and they go to their local zoo frequently, and they love the zoo, and they know all the ins and outs, which exhibits have the animals in them, and what time the penguins get fed, and all that kind of stuff. And it's the end of the day, and the kid is getting tired and hungry and crabby, and they're walking towards the exit, and she sees a man with a gun kick open a door to a public restroom. And she turns and runs back into the exhibits, searching for a place to hide. So the entire book takes place over about a 4-hour period. And it's scary and it's exciting.
Wow.
And you're turning the pages like as fast as you can. And it's a really exciting, wonderful
Now
book.
that you're talking about it, I remember reading about it in the New York Times book review.
Very, very
It's gotten
good.
a lot of press,
Very
yeah.
well reviewed.
Yep.
All right.
So I have 2 books with a semi-local tie-in. Both of these books that I'm about to talk about, the authors are coming to the Larchmont Women's Club Holiday Book and Author Luncheon on December 8th at the Orient Beach Club. So if you like the sound of them, you can come to the luncheon, buy a copy of the book, and have the author sign it while you're there. Yes, they do signings. The first one is called Sunken Gold, A Story of World War I Espionage and the Greatest Treasure Salvage in History by Joseph A. Williams. So this is the story of the HMS Laurentic, which was struck by German mines off the coast of Ireland and sank. The ship was secretly carrying 44 tons of gold bullion to fund World War I, and it was coming from the United States via Canada. The United States was not yet involved in World War I, and it was going to Britain.
Right.
So after the sinking, an incredibly elaborate secret mission to retrieve the gold had to be undertaken.
Is it nonfiction?
This is nonfiction.
Wow.
This is a nonfiction book, and the author, Joseph Williams, is local and came and spoke at the Larchmont Library last month. Very interesting speaker. The book, it's a very, very fascinating story about how they had to conduct this incredibly secret mission to get the gold because they needed the money.
Right.
And they couldn't tip off the Germans of the fact that they were really looking for sunken treasure. So that's Sunken Gold by Joseph Williams. And the other one is written by Pamela Paul, the editor of the New York Times Book Review. It's called My Life with Bob. Flawed heroine keeps book of books, plot ensues. So Bob, that she's referring to, is her book of books. And Pamela Paul, no wonder that she became the editor of the New York Times Book Review, has kept a book for 28 years of every book that she has read from Sweet Valley High all the way through the classics.
Wow.
It's amazing. And so she writes about this process of keeping all
I
these
try and
little
do
reviews.
that now, but my God,
Right.
who thinks?
Well,
Wow.
it's clear why she does what she does. But it's not just a story of all of the books that she's kept or the process of keeping it, but she ties in, the stages of her life and what she was reading, and it's sort of a little...
And does she give you a little bit of a...
She does. She talks about the different
the book.
books.
Oh,
And
good.
so if you have an avid reader in your life and you would like to give them
Great
something, somebody
suggestion.
who's loves to, there's lots of book suggestions in there too, which is really nice. I have a friend, a neighbor who's in her 90s who, anytime I recommend a book to her, writes me a little review. And she does something very similar to this. She writes these great little reviews. And her daughter short and sweet. Her daughter and I have been able to forward them to a number of the authors, and they're always delighted to get them.
Terrific. Wow. I love that. That sounds fabulous. Shall I throw one in now?
Yeah, sure.
Okay.
Sure.
We're doing book club and ladies who love to read. And this is Without You, There Is No Us by Suki Kim, nonfiction, and it's amazing. She is a woman who came to New York when she was 13. She came from South Korea, and she goes back to North Korea as an ESL teacher. And I didn't really get a picture. You said, look at a satellite, it's amazing. Yeah. But to see their isolation and what their lives are like, and she's so uptight, she can't say anything. She has a minder who watches her all the time. And it is an amazing read for me to see in 2017, and especially with what's going on. And, the dialogue is not so good. But it is truly, I have really found it fascinating. And the reason it's called Without You, There Is No Us, it's a song that all the young kids sing about Kim Sung-il, the first father. So.
All right. Now, you mentioned people who keep track of their reading.
Yeah.
There is the world's most famous librarian, just wrote her very first novel.
Wow.
Her name is Nancy Pearl, and there's actually a Nancy Pearl action figure.
Yep.
There really is. It's very funny.
With
and she
shushing
shushes.
action.
It's great.
So
it's a great thing. But she
That
just
was
wrote
the old days.
her very first novel called George and Lizzie. And it's just so charming, so wonderful. Lizzie is head over heels with this guy named Jack when she's in college, and it's the end of their, freshman or sophomore year, and he's going home, and he promises to write, and she waits, and there's no letters. So now she's very despondent, very upset, very depressed, and she tries to deal with this by drinking a lot and smoking a lot of pot. So one night she goes out to have buzzed bowling, and she flings the ball, and it goes into the next lane, and it ruins the game of this man who is trying to impress his first date. And of course, opposites attract, and he thinks she's very pretty, and he thinks she's the nicest thing in America. And she isn't so sure if this is going to work, because George comes from this wonderful family, supportive and loving and intelligent and just tremendous, and he's studying to be a dentist, and she comes from a family where the parents are academics, and they had no idea how to raise a child, and they would write papers about her.
All right,
and the graduate students are trying to raise her. And this is the story of their relationship and their marriage, and it's absolutely the most charming book.
Great.
So I really recommend George and Lizzie.
All right, we're at halftime, kids.
Okay, we're going to speed it up. Lee Child has written a new book. I love the Jack Reacher books. I cannot picture Reacher as anything like Tom Cruise, but Reacher is on a bus headed to the northern lakes of Lake Superior and all of that, and he gets off the bus to stretch his legs, and he sees a ring in a pawn shop.
Wow.
It's a very tiny ring, and it's a West Point ring from 2005, and he knows that nobody who went to West Point would ever give up their ring. And so he makes it his mission to find out who owned this ring and what happened to that person.
Wow.
And so it's just a fascinating look.
Lee Child, you talk about not being able to, you can't.
Oh, goodness. It's like a kick-ass kind of a thing. I just love it. I love it.
Okay, now I have 3 books. I'm calling this my New York trilogy. So this is for lovers of all things New York City. The first one is Going Into Town, A Love Letter to New York by Roz Chast.
I love Roz Chast.
So, New Yorker.
Yeah. New Yorker, and she's been an illustrator, cartoonist at the New Yorker forever. Since I was a child, I remember seeing her illustrations in the New Yorker. She's written a number of books, of these sort of graphic novel books. This one is a version of the guide to New York that she made for her child when her child went off to college in New York City.
What a great gift.
And
That's fun.
it struck me very funny when I read it. I went to college in New York City. My daughter is attending college in New York City. And my mother sat me down and explained to me, you know, the grid and the north and the west and the east, and very seriously said, and if you want to go across town, you have to learn how to take that crosstown bus. Don't be afraid of the crosstown bus. And I did the very same thing with my daughter, and she talks about it in this book.
That's
So it really is a love letter to New York and all things New York City, and it's fun. So if you have a new adult or a teenager that's enjoying learning about New York City, perfect gift for them. The next one is Chief Engineer, Washington Roebling, the man who built the Brooklyn Bridge by Erica Wagner. And this is just a fascinating look at one of America's most distinguished engineers, the man who built the Brooklyn Bridge. And Erica Wagner uses bits from his newly discovered memoir, which had previously been lost to history.
Oh, wow.
And so she's able to really
So
incorporate
it's different
his
than
voice.
the Brooklyn Bridge book that we all read by.
It is. This is incorporating his own memoir, and his voice really comes through in the book. So if you have any lovers of history, this is a great option for them. And last but certainly not least in my New York trilogy, I have Vanishing New York, How a Great City Lost Its Soul by Jeremiah Moss. Now, Vanishing New York is a blog that chronicles block by block how New York has changed and is changing. And it is an unflattering look at gentrification and how some of our sort of unofficial monuments have been lost to things like Duane Reade.
Well, no one can afford to live there.
No one can
and
afford
there's
to live
just
there.
I'm personally devastated by the loss of the Carnegie Deli. So
or the stage, or the got it.
right.
So it's sort of a colorful guided tour of the most changed parts of town, which would of course be the Lower East Side and Harlem, as well as Williamsburg, and a loving eulogy to some of the iconic spots that are no longer with us. So if you have somebody who was living in Manhattan in the 80s and would relate to that, that's a great choice for them.
Perfect. What about you?
Okay, another fiction book. Tom Perrotta, who you may know from the book Election or the book The Leftovers, which turned into a TV movie, has written something called Mrs. Fletcher. And the New York Times says, Mrs. Fletcher is the sweetest and most charming novel about pornography addiction and the harrowing issues of sexual consent that you will probably ever read. Eve Fletcher is a recent divorcee. Her only child is going off to college, and they both look into their burgeoning sexuality.
Wow.
So it's very funny.
And I just
very,
want to
very
add,
funny.
it was on the cover of the New York Times Book Review one week in the summer, and it's one of those books that it has like the highest holds that were ever placed on it.
That's very funny in the
Westchester-
library.
Yeah, in the
That's-
library.
It's not explicit, but it certainly talks a lot about desires. I'll put it that way. For a nonfiction book, just published this week, it's called Sticky Fingers, The Life and Times of Jan Wenner and the Rolling Stone magazine by Joe Hagan. Now, interestingly, Jan Wenner had commissioned this book, had hired
And he
the
doesn't
author,
like it very much.
and he hates it.
That's
He
right.
called it deeply flawed and tawdry. So it takes a biography of Jan Wenner, the history of Rolling Stone magazine, which, by the way, was named after a Bob Dylan song, not the band.
Bob Dylan was on the cover of Rolling
Right.
Stone more than anyone else.
Right. So
Really?
he
Just saw
started
that.
this in 1967, and it goes up to pretty much, this time, contemporary time. He was such a jerk,
Yeah.
a real jerk.
Yeah.
The book is a little bit filthy, and gossipy, lots of name dropping, a lot of fun to read.
Good.
A lot of fun.
Okay, now I have 3 new fiction releases by some very popular authors. October is a huge publishing month.
Yes.
Lots of books come out, and this has been no exception. We have some really great follow-ups from some popular authors. The first one is The Rules of Magic by Alice Hoffman. So this is a prequel to her bestseller, Practical Magic, which came out a very long time ago.
Yeah.
There's a movie that was made of it with Nicole Kidman and Sandra Bullock an age ago. But it has remained a very popular title. She's written many more books since then, but Practical Magic is, I think, one of her
It's
most
one of her
popular,
iconic titles,
ones.
yeah.
It's my favorite too.
Okay.
So this is a prequel, and it's the story of the Owens family, focusing on the aunts from Practical Magic, and they have a curse on their family that dates all the way back to 1620. So it delves a little more into that curse, the origin of that curse, and then the story of how it affects the aunts.
Good.
It is just a great follow-up to Practical Magic and a very quick read if you're a fan of Alice Hoffman. The next book is called Fresh Complaints, which is a book of stories by Jeffrey Eugenides. I always mess up
Oh,
his
right.
name.
That's a hard name.
Eugenides.
Right.
I think.
So he has had several best-selling novels, including Middlesex and The Virgin Suicides. This is stories. He's an astute observer of adolescence and self-discovery and love and all things of that kind. And then this is
Families, disintegration.
yes, all kinds of things of that sort. And this is no different. So it's a great follow-up to his last book. I think people will enjoy it. And then we have Manhattan Beach by Jennifer Egan.
Everybody loves that. That's a very popular book.
So she won the Pulitzer Prize for A Visit from the Goon Squad. This book is very different than that. This is both a noir mystery and a historical novel, which is completely different from her other books. And it takes place during World War II. It's populated by gangsters, sailors, bankers, and union men. And it's the story of a woman whose father disappears, and then when she's a child, and then as she's grown
on
up,
this whole
yes, she's on a quest, and she finds out more about what that disappearance was all about. And it's going to be, a very, very popular book and a great book to give as a gift.
Good.
Yep.
How about you, Miss Susan? Quick.
Right. Little Fires Everywhere by Celeste Ng. Now, this is one I just mailed a copy to my mom because I liked it so much. And she said to me, you've got to send it to me. So I did. $7.80 to mail the book. But it takes place in Shaker Heights about 15, 20 years ago. The scions of the town, very planned community. Everything runs very nicely and predictably. And into this moves a single mom and her 15-year-old daughter. And they shake up everything.
And there's also a very small community, and it's kind of
It is. And it's really about what makes a family and what makes a mother. And it's an excellent read, and I hope that lots of you will enjoy it. The New York Times called it ambitious, accomplished, and complex.
great.
Okay. Everybody knows about John Green, who has written lots of teenage angsty books, and his new one called Turtles All the Way Down is in a similar vein. I don't think the plots of his book are his strong points. What really rings true is the characterization. And in this book, Aza is a 16-year-old girl who has extreme depression and anxiety. And I'll tell you, when I read this book, my heart just broke for this poor girl. I mean, she could barely function. And that's his strength, I think, really portraying the inner lives of teenagers. In this book, her mind is like in the throes of a civil war. She cannot practically think because of the assault of thoughts that are just running through her head that she cannot turn off.
Okay, we've got 5 minutes,
Okay.
kids, so choose your
One
very
more for me.
Yes.
A children's book.
Oh.
Okay. And I'm always looking for books for my grandchildren. We have 5, soon to be 8 grandchildren.
Lucky
So in this one, Kelp is a unicorn. Kelp is this really cute little pastel-colored
Lucy
unicorn
loves uniforms. That's
floating around through the ocean with other little unicorns, with other, narwhals. And Kelp thinks that he's a narwhal. And then one day he gets separated from all the narwhals, and he looks on the shore and he sees unicorns, and he realizes he's actually really a unicorn. So where does he actually belong? Is he a unicorn?
wonderful.
Is he
So he's
a
finding
narwhal?
himself.
So it's about love and acceptance, and being true to yourself means embracing differences and all that sort of thing. And it's sweet and it's charming, and it's a visually beautiful little book, and it's a great gift for like 2 to 6-year-old, I would say.
How about you, Miss Laura? What's your last?
I will just throw in one last book, and that is Kurt Vonnegut, Complete Stories. I'm a huge fan of Kurt Vonnegut. He's one of my favorite authors. And this is all of his short fiction has never been in one volume. It's a great gift for anyone that is a fan of Kurt Vonnegut or who has never read Kurt Vonnegut. And it's a little known fact that more than half of his output was actually short fiction. And then finally, I will just say, if you didn't hear anything you want to read, we also have a great coffee mug for
Yes,
sale.
you do. I've been drinking
Larchmont Library,
Larchmont Library.
which benefits the Larchmont Library. They're for sale at the front
I just
desk.
have to mention very quickly, this is enormous, but it's grand, and I started it, and I'm just enjoying. I had no idea of he was so poor, and his family, and he historically, he got into so much trouble, and then later on, he was such an amazing general, and everything Ron Chernow does. Hamilton, I loved, and this is terrific. And my last one is Zadie Smith, Swing Time, that I adored. It's about dancing, it's about love, it's about everything that's wonderful. So if you want to get a book for someone that really is in, Sadie wrote White Teeth.
She wrote White Teeth.
She's just a terrific author. And really, I felt so into it, and it made me feel wonderfully happy and then sad too. So we've got a couple minutes.
Books make the absolute best gifts
They
for
do.
holidays.
I agree.
Absolutely. And the Larchmont Library and the Mamaroneck Library, both every year we produce a suggested book guide. So do stop by your local library, pick up a copy, and visit a local store, support your local businesses, and buy a book for the person
And
that
I told
you love.
you before that my family does an exchange when we get together for Christmas. We all bring what was our favorite book that we've read, and then we wrap them up and
That's a
exchange.
nice idea.
And it's so much fun. I love doing it. And buying books, and it's so important because I love having a book. And I love supporting bookstores. We've got Anderson's, we've got the Voracious Reader. Here we're very lucky in Larchmont.
And if they don't have any of these books, they'll order them
They
for you.
always do,
They will order them for
and
you.
they'll give you a discount for a book club. They're terrific, and it's a supporting of a local community that means a great deal. I love having you guys here for this. It's really a very special time for me. We all know
It's
we're-
always so much fun.
We love doing it.
we all read so much, and I love when you tell me we're going to read this for One Book, One Community, which we haven't even mentioned, but we'll come back and do it. It's on the
April.
60s in April, and what is the book we're reading?
The book is called 1968, the year that rocked the world.
Right.
And so we have all kinds of programs and fun events going on revolving around the theme of what happened in the U.S. during 1968.
And I've been watching the Ken Burns, I'm sure. Oh, my God, the Vietnam.
I was born in 1968, so
Oh, you baby.
a very important year to me.
Don't show off. I was married in 1967, so only 50 years later, right? Anyway, ladies, it is a delightful, delightful pleasure to have you on, and we'll see you
you.
again, I'm sure. We'll do
Absolutely,
this.
yeah.
And thank you for all of your suggestions. Thank you for watching. Happy holidays. Go get a book. It's a terrific gift. And thank you for watching Know Your Neighbors, and see you next time. Bye-bye.